Hi there guys, it's Mike from MCQ Bushcraft here, and as you can see I'm out in some pretty damp conditions today, and at this time of year weather like this is fairly consistent and quite prolonged when it does occur, and the clothing I wear when I'm out in weather like this is really important. It doesn't take long to get soaked through to the bone if you're out working away from camp and you're not wearing the right clothing. So in this video I'm going to take you through the waterproof shell that I use when I'm out practicing bushcraft or doing the many activities that I enjoy doing, that keeps my clothing dry and keeps the water off me. So before we actually take a look at the waterproofs themselves and I discuss the product with you and we have a look at its pros and cons, we're actually just going to have a look at a few key things that have really helped steer decision making in a particular direction. And it's a good thing to do with all products because we get a lot of products thrown at us today in the bushcraft world, and self-reliance, survival and preparedness, and all those subjects really cross paths on many levels. So a lot of the same products you'll see in different disciplines. But some of these products are marketed at us at being everything we're looking for and more, and only really through testing them and trying them do we realise it's not what we're after. So it can really help to take a few steps back and just have a look at your environment, the sorts of things you do in your environment, and often the end result is far simpler than you really imagined. If we have a look at the environment I live in, I live in the British Isles, and it's a very damp part of the world, and it rains here on and off almost all year round. And that tells me an awful lot about the waterproofs I need already. If I have a set of waterproofs that are lined and they're very warm, and it's like a dedicated jacket with a lining in, then it's only going to be suited for colder times of the year. So what I'm after is quite a versatile shell, something thin that's really just going to do the job of keeping the water off of me and off of my clothing. That's really all I need, because I live in a country where it rains all throughout the seasons, so having something season specific is not an option for me at all. But there are other aspects as well that come into play, such as what do I actually do when I go out? So do I go hiking? Am I doing mountaineering? Am I cycling? What am I actually doing? Well, for me it's practicing bushcraft and studying bushcraft, and that encompasses quite a few different subjects. It can involve hiking, it can involve camping for prolonged periods of time, and using the resources you can find around you to sustain yourself. So foraging and identification of plants and funguses, hunting and fishing. It encompasses lots and lots of different things, all things to be done in an outdoor environment and in any weather. So having a look at our environment and the things we do within it is a great way of channeling what you're looking for into an end result. It allows you to just get a much clearer picture on what you're actually after, especially if you write it down as well, which really does help with lots of different things in life. But if we just take everything I've just said about the environment I live in and the kind of weather conditions I'm enduring, the sort of activities I do, we're able to sort of produce a series of points of what we're actually after from a waterproof garment. So the obvious, for me, it needs to be waterproof, quite obviously. It doesn't want to be season specific, so I'm not really looking for anything that's got lining in it or anything too thick and bulky, because for me it needs to be compressible, because I'm not always going to be using it, but I may want to carry it on me in those events where rainstorms come in and suddenly catch me out. It obviously needs to be fairly strong because I don't want it to tear, so I'm going to need to look for something that's of a fairly good quality, and I don't want it to be absorbent, so I'm not looking for any sort of thick absorbent fabric, because some waterproof clothing can actually be quite absorbent and hold water, because it needs to dry quickly, because I might want to shake it off, put it back in a stuff sack and chuck it back in my rucksack after the rain's gone the next day, for example, especially if I want to uproot and move camp or something like that, or even if I'm hunting and I'm carrying my gear on me. So what I'm looking for is a fairly minimal setup, and I'm not really asking it to do too much. I mean, most waterproof fabrics these days are breathable, so you should be able to find something breathable pretty easily for not too much money, as it's been around for a while. But what I'm looking for is just something lightweight, compressible, that can go in my pack and I can forget about it almost all year round. And the most important thing is I want it to be compatible. So the clothing I currently wear at the moment is the clothing that I'm wearing specific to that season, and that's the next important point we need to go on to. So if we have a look at the clothing I'm wearing right now, as trousers I'm wearing Four-Raven trousers, and Four-Raven is a brand of trouser that I wear pretty much all year round really, and it's a polycotton trouser, and polycotton meaning it's sort of part synthetic, part cotton, usually about 80% synthetic, 20% cotton, and it just makes for a fairly robust lightweight material that you can wear, and it fends off moisture very well and dries quite quickly. And these trousers generally come impregnated with a sort of beeswax, paraffin wax mix that, you know, is nicely embedded into the trousers. So when you first buy them and you've got your brand new Four-Ravens, you'll see the water bead off them, and they generally stack up to moisture pretty well. Inevitably a point comes where you have to wash them, and you put them in the washing machine, and the wax gradually gets sucked out of the trouser, and you can buy a block, or you can make your own block, a combination of beeswax and paraffin wax, and rub that in and iron it into the trouser. It obviously builds up that layer again and replenishes it, and you can chuck it in the tumble dryer if you really want to, and that will reheat the wax you've ironed in and just get a better permeation in the actual fabric. But it's never quite as effective as when you actually first take them out of the box. You know, nevertheless, it's a good trouser. It's just hard to replicate how they arrive, is what I'm trying to say. But one thing I will say is, although they're a good trouser and they fend off water pretty good and they dry okay, they are by no means a waterproof trouser that should be bought if you're in conditions of prolonged rain. If you're out away from a camp, or you're walking through the moors and you've got very little cover and the rain is torrential, these trousers will basically be soaked. They dry quick, so around a campfire you can actually dry them, and they do dry very quickly around a campfire, but it isn't really something you want to be doing, especially if you're out for prolonged periods of time in damp conditions. Even if you do have a camp, you don't want to be drying your kit. You want to be keeping your kit dry if you can. My top layer is often a Wicca layer t-shirt, and I do wear a Wicca layer underwear as well. I just find clothes like that much easier to dry and wash out on the trail, or wash and dry I should say, because, you know, you can wring them out. They're generally quite durable, and I find them just a bit better for hygiene. And I don't wear cotton t-shirts when I'm out working and doing strenuous activity, because its thermal rating is terrible when it's soaked through with sweat or wet, and you just find yourself freezing and just shedding it and putting whatever you had on top of it back on. So it's not really something I wear, cotton t-shirts. But in the summer I generally wear a shirt of some description, generally a poly cotton shirt again, because it dries a bit better and it's easier to maintain on the trail. And over the top of that, sometimes when it gets cold in the evenings, I wear a fleece or a woolen jumper. But I do have a very nice synthetic checkered shirt with wool lining that I put on over the top of everything in the winter, and that really does help me keep the temperatures up. And with a set of thermals underneath the trousers and a Wicca layer, it really is a very good way of regulating temperature. So I've briefly gone over my clothing there, and not because this video is about clothing in general, it's mainly just about waterproofs, but the reason I'm mentioning them is to give you a good idea of how the waterproofs work with the clothing I'm wearing. But the waterproofs I've got are really there to be compatible with this clothing that I'm wearing, so they can work all throughout the year together, and the waterproofs aren't then season specific, like a lot of thick bulky jackets you see out there that just really aren't suited for general bushcraft work, especially if you want to be carrying them all year round because you're in a climate where rain is consistent. So now we've talked about all the aspects that have led me to my choice, we can actually have a look at the waterproof shell that I use. The jacket I use is called the Deerhunter Gotland, and I've used Deerhunter gear for about 2 years now and only had good experiences with it. The fabric itself is called Deertex, and it's basically just Deerhunter's answer to Gore-Tex. This is a single layered garment, so it's not lined at all, making it very lightweight and non-absorbent, which is brilliant. If we have a look at the front pocket on the left hand side of the chest there, that's primarily designed for a radio, because a lot of this gear is marketed at people who are hunting, and obviously sometimes they have radios on them and need to communicate with each other. So it has a small pocket at the top there for the little aerial to poke through, and a larger pocket for you to actually put the radio in, but it can be used for anything, and it's obviously taped on with waterproof zips, so no water can get in there when it's done up. We've got a small pocket on the left arm as well. You can see with all their pockets you've got this little shroud at the top of the zip that it fits into, and that just stops water being able to get in when it runs down the garment, which is really useful. You've also got 2 standard pockets as well, just by our hips, both with waterproof zips as standard on the jacket. On the inside of the jacket you have 2 very deep bucket pockets, generally designed for things like cartridges so they can't fall out. And they're very, very long, and you can put pretty much anything you like in these and it won't fall out, which is quite useful. For adjustments you have a number of different things on the jacket, so you can tailor it to your body. You've got some Velcro straps underneath the arms where you can tailor it into the top of your torso. You've also got the same system on the wrists, so you can taper it up a bit more, so it's not kind of too open around the wrists, which does help in wet weather and cold conditions. And you've also got some drawstrings at the base of the jacket which allow you to tuck it up underneath a woolen jumper, for example, to stop any undergarments underneath the jacket getting damp, especially in cold weather. This really does help. For a hood, you've got a very slimline single layered hood that just unfolds out of the cuff and velcros out and can just go over the top of a hat or over the top of your head, and it's just a low profile hood, just good enough to keep the rain off, and it has some drawstrings on it so you can taper it in a bit if you're really getting showered. But putting the jacket to one side, let's have a look at the trousers. The trousers are much the same as the jacket in material and layering, so they're single layered and they're made of that Deertex waterproof material. The flexibility of the material really comes into its own when you're wearing it as an overall over the top of existing trousers, simply because it still offers you that flexibility and you don't feel restricted when you're moving around. It's important to note that I bought these trousers a size up from my normal waist size, so they would fit as an overall and I could put them on over the top of my boots when I'm working outdoors. And it also means I can still wear them as a trouser. I just need to wear a pair of leggings or thermals, and they can be worn singly as a trouser very comfortably. The trousers have a reinforced knee, which is very useful. It also has a waterproof ankle, and at the base of the ankle we have some webbing, which just helps strengthen it where it gets most of its abuse. We have the same design of pockets on the trouser that we do on the jacket, and if you look on the right leg on the side of the thigh, you'll see you have a very large pocket there, which can be quite useful and is taped on as well, with the same waterproof zips and shrouding on the zip, so no moisture can get in. You do also have two standardised pockets just on the hips, as you do with most trousers. We also have a fourth pocket just above the left knee. I found this to be in a very strange position because it opens up underneath the knee, but not quite enough to be a knee pad, and I generally don't use that pocket. The waistline on the trousers is elasticated, but you also have belt loops as well if you do wish to put a belt on the trouser and just wear it singly as a trouser. So this is the setup I use. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to rush out and buy the same brand. In fact, if you try and find the Deerhunter Gotland range, you'll find it pretty difficult because they were discontinued quite a long time ago and they've been selling off stock ever since. But Deerhunter make a whole range of similar lines of clothing like this. You just need to go out and have a look through some of their range and find the thin stuff that's like a shell, as opposed to the lined jackets that might be far too bulky to compress away and carry with you all year round. And this is just really the shell that I use, and you can see that the trousers here you can pull right up and they're elasticated and no water can get in, and you can tuck your jumper underneath the trousers because I buy them a size too big, so they go over the top of my boots and generally act as an overall, because most of the time my wax polycottons are just fine in weather like this that's just damp, because they dry very, very quickly. But I hope you found this video useful on waterproofs for bushcraft. It's not really a subject that is too common, but at the same time it can be one of those tricky things that you kind of start looking online and before you know it you're looking at a whole range of different products, some of which might not be right for you, and it can all get very, very complicated when really it's just something quite simple. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you found this video useful. And if you're interested in any of the gear I've used in this video, I'll put some links in the description below so you can have a look around and hopefully get the answers you're looking for. But please feel free to have a look at my website, YouTube channel, or follow me on Twitter if you're interested in more bushcraft information. And I hope everyone's well out there, and hopefully I'll see you in the next vid. Thanks again for watching, and take care.